Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking into a really disturbing story out of Russia. It happened back in the days right after the Soviet Union fell. It's known as the Slaveholder Case, and honestly, it takes us into some incredibly dark places about human cruelty. We're pulling this from police reports, victim testimonies, real sources.
And it's so important to picture the setting. Russia then, post-Soviet collapse, it was chaos. Economic hardship was everywhere. People were truly desperate, just trying to survive day to day. That kind of desperation, well, it created an environment where these sorts of extreme crimes could actually happen.
Exactly. So what we want to do today is unpack how one man, Alexander Komin, built this secret world of terror, literally enslaving people, and also look at the incredible, just desperate fight for survival by the people he trapped. Let's get into it. Okay, so the man at the center, Alexander Komin, born 1953, same year Stalin died, interestingly. Grew up poor, Sergiev Pozad. Dropped out of school pretty early, 8th grade, tried the military, didn't work out. Then first real trouble with the law at 18, assault. Got 3 years in prison. And prison, well, it changed him, but not in a good way. They put him in the sewing section. And he found he had this disturbing passion for tailoring.
Yeah, it's kind of a twisted origin story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Prison becomes his vocational school for horror. He wasn't just learning to sew. He met another inmate there, someone who actually ran a sort of slave labor setup before using homeless people to make things to sell. Komin heard this, and it sparked this awful idea for his own forced labor business centered on sewing.
So he gets out of prison, tries legitimate sewing work, but, it pays almost nothing. He ends up taking an electrical maintenance job, and that's where he meets Alexander Mikheyev, who becomes his accomplice. Komin actually shares his dark fantasy with Mikheyev, and Mikheyev is receptive, just like that. Then 1991 happens, the Soviet Union dissolves. For Komin, that was the green light. He apparently felt it was time to act.
You have to imagine the feeling then. The old rules were gone, a sense of lawlessness maybe. For someone like Komin, it probably felt like anything was possible, like the state was too weak, too chaotic to notice or even care about what he was planning. A terrible kind of opportunity.
Their first idea was maybe using victims for farm labor, but that shifted. They decided that they needed somewhere confined, inescapable, a sewing workshop. Mikheyev suggested using Komin's old garage, but building under it. A hidden bunker. Took them 4 years to build this thing, finished in 94. And the specs, they're chilling, 40 feet deep, but only about 100 square feet in total. Just 2 small rooms, damp, dirty, 3 bunk beds, 1 TV, the sewing machines, very basic bathroom, kitchen stuff. And Komin added these personal touches, pornographic pictures reflecting his own fantasies, right alongside religious icons. A bizarre mix. Security was key. 3 heavy military-grade doors. And Komin, being an electrician, rigged an electric trap near one exit. Touch it, you get shocked. Designed to prevent escape. So the bunker's ready. Komin starts looking for victims. He targeted marginalized people, mostly women, people he thought, society wouldn't really look for if they disappeared. The first was Vera, 33, homeless. He approached her, offered a cigarette, a meal, standard lure. Then he drugged her drink, clonidine. It's a sedative. She woke up in the bunker. Komin told her flat out, "You're my slave now. You'll sew for me." Vera wasn't great at sewing, apparently. So Komin, he beat her, tortured her, sexually assaulted her, threatened to kill her, dismember her. Just brutal control. He pressured her, forced her to name other homeless people who could sew. Okay. She eventually gave him a name, Tatyana Melnikova, 35 years old. She actually had an apartment. Yeah. So January 1995, Komin goes to get Tatyana Melnikova. He shows up at her apartment, but there's someone else there, Nikolai Malyshev. Turns out Nikolai is Tatyana's boyfriend, and Komin actually knew him from prison, an old acquaintance.
What a coincidence. Horrifying, really. Yeah. Running into someone you knew from prison in that situation. And Komin's reaction. It shows just how ruthless he was. No hesitation. He saw Nikolai purely as a problem to be eliminated. That past connection meant nothing.
Nothing at all. He invites them both back to the garage, uses the same method, drugs them both. Yeah. He and Mikheyev talk about keeping Nikolai, but decide, no, too risky, he might fight back. So they murdered him, stripped him naked, drove him out somewhere remote in the dead of winter, and just left him there to freeze to death. Hypothermia. The police found the body later, but just assumed he was drunk and died accidentally. Case closed. Didn't look any deeper. Back in the bunker, Tatyana Melnikova is understandably traumatized, but she is a spilled seamstress. Komin was impressed. Because she was useful, he didn't harm her as much as Vera, but the work. Relentless. 16 hours a day. She had to produce 32 garments daily. Vera was basically demoted to cleaning, cooking, general upkeep, and their food. It was starvation rations. Tiny amounts of potatoes, bread, grain. They were so hungry they apparently started eating potato peels just to get by. Komin's business, this twisted sewing operation, was actually doing well, so he wanted more workers. He forces the women again. Name someone else who can sew. This time, they gave him the name Yevgeny Chugunov, 37 years old, an alcoholic, former soldier. But they were wrong. He couldn't sew. Komin lured him to the bunker anyway. And it turned out Yevgeny did have useful skills, electrical work, carpentry. So Komin used him for repairs and modifications of the bunker.
You see how Komin adapts, right? He just takes whatever skill the victim has and incorporates it. It's pure exploitation. He sees people only for their utility to him, cold and calculated.
But after only about 3 weeks, Komin got paranoid. Yevgeny was strong, maybe he tried to escape, maybe overpower them. So Komin came up with this grotesque plan. He convinced Yevgeny to build something, an electric chair, told him it was for punishing future victims who misbehaved. Yevgeny, probably terrified and manipulated, built it. Then Komin used it on him, starved him first, made him weak, tied him to the chair he'd just built. In this sick display of mercy, Komin let him have one last cigarette. Then, the truly awful part, he made Vera and Tatyana choose which one of them would flip the switch. Tatyana refused. Vera. She was terrified of Komin. She pressed the button, electrocuted Yevgeny. They dumped his body somewhere remote, just gone. After this, Komin started to trust Vera more. He thought, she's complicit now, she's bound to me. He actually started letting her go outside with him to help lure new victims. That's how they got Tatyana Koshikova, 36 years old, a mother. She worked in a restaurant kitchen, but was in trouble for stealing food, likely for her child. Vera approached her, promised part-time sewing work, better pay. Koshikova fell for it, drugged, woke up in the bunker. Koshikova, though, she showed incredible strength. Komin beat her, tortured her like the others, but she refused to break. Thinking about her child kept her going. She even started protecting Tatyana Melnikova when Komin got abusive. These two women, Melnikova and Koshikova, they bonded. They watched Komin. Notice he turned off the electric trap on the door when he came inside. They planned an escape. Tried to make a run for it when he entered once, but Komin caught them. He was furious. His punishment was medieval neck chains, bolted to the wall. They had to work while chained like animals. And then came the tattoos. Komin gave them a choice, a truly sadistic choice. He'd either slit their mouths ear to ear with a knife, or he'd tattoo their faces. They chose the tattoos, terrified. He etched words onto their faces, marking them, declaring them his slaves, his property, permanently. Vera saw all this, the chains, the tattoos. It must have pushed her over the edge. She tried to escape again on her own, got out. Komin went after her, found her in a public place, and instead of violence, he charmed her, promised things would be better, promised her a share of the profits. It's incredible manipulation, isn't it? He knew exactly her weaknesses, her desperation. She had nowhere else to go, really. He could just switch tactics like that, from brute force to psychological control. Masterful, in a horrifying way.
Absolutely. She went back with him. And of course, the moment they were back in the bunker, the promises vanished. He tortured her brutally, told her he'd never trust her again. After that, Komin stopped using Vera to lure victims. He started hunting himself. He found Nazimova, 27 years old, serious mental health issues, living rough near train stations. Same routine, lured her, drugged her, imprisoned her. But because of her mental state, she couldn't really work the sewing machine, so Komin just used her for sexual abuse. Then came the final two murders inside the bunker. Vera first. She was no longer useful for luring. She was a flight risk. She knew too much. Komin killed her with an injection of antifreeze. The other women were forced to watch. Her body was dumped in a river. Then Nazimova, also deemed useless, killed the same way. Antifreeze injection. Her body left in a wasteland.
The escalation is just staggering. Killing becomes routine. Disposal of inconvenient people. He's eliminating witnesses, consolidating control. It's complete dehumanization. Their lives meant absolutely nothing beyond their function in his twisted world.
So after Vera and Nazimova were murdered, 3 women were left. Tatyana Melnikova, Tatyana Koshikova, and Irina Ganun. Irina was 27. She'd also been lured by Vera earlier. And here's another chilling connection. Irina used to be neighbors with Mikheyev, the accomplice. She'd actually pleaded with him, bugged him to let her go because of her child, but he just ignored her, coldly. But then something really strange happened. Komin, he fell in love with Irina, deeply. Wanted to marry her, have children with her. It was bizarre. He started trying to impress her. Like on International Women's Day, March 8th, 1997, he brought them all a special meal. The other women noticed immediately how he treated Irina differently. So they came up with the desperate plan. Irina would pretend to love him back. She started playing the part. She even wrote him a poem. And incredibly, it moved him to tears.
Just imagine the courage that took, the sheer mental fortitude to play that role day in, day out, knowing one wrong move could mean death for her child, for the others. She was literally acting for her life. It's an extraordinary example of survival through, well, sheer cunning and bravery.
Komin totally bought it. believed she loved him. And suddenly, he couldn't stand seeing her, his supposed love, living in that filthy bunker. So he invited her and her child to move into his apartment with him. Now, Irina's out of the bunker, but she's still trapped. Komin carried a knife constantly, threatened her all the time, try to escape, and I'll kill you and your child. She had to keep playing the part. Introduced him to her parents, talked about wedding plans, just biding her time, waiting for any chance. The chance came. Irina told Komin her child was sick, needed to see a doctor. And Komin, completely out of character, said okay, said he'd stay home. But crucially, just before this, Irina overheard Komin and Mikheyev talking. They were planning to kill Tatyana Melnikova and Tatyana Koshikova, the two women still in the bunker, get rid of them so Komin could start this new life with Irina. That sealed it for her. She knew she had to act now. So she leaves the apartment with her child, says she's going to the doctor, but she makes a run for it, straight to the police station. She was terrified it was a test, that he'd follow her. But no one did. At the station at first, they didn't believe her. The story sounded too insane. But then one officer who actually knew Irina personally listened, and he believed her. He got a team together. Irina led them to the old garage. She warned them about the electric trap on the door. Finding that trap basically made Komin confess on the spot. And the scene inside, just horrific. The police found Tatyana Melnikova and Tatyana Koshikova still chained by their necks to the wall, emaciated, and those tattoos on their faces.
It's such a moment of incredible relief, their rescue, but layered with just profound horror at what they endured, those tattoos. A permanent reminder. Freedom, yes, but with scars, physical and psychological, that would never fully heal. Survival's one thing, recovery is another battle entirely.
Komin and Mikheyev were arrested. The charges were extensive: multiple murders, torture, kidnapping, rape, forced labor. The list goes on. Komin's trial was something else. His defense. Audacious. He claimed he was basically providing for them. A home, food, work. So they were his employees, and that he genuinely loved Irina.
And the verdict was frankly shocking to many. Komin got life in prison, not the death penalty, despite everything with 4 murders, the torture. Mikheyev got 20 years. He claimed Komin forced him into it. It just shows how unpredictable justice can be and how perpetrators can construct these bizarre justifications for their actions.
Komin didn't last long in prison. Just 4 days after his conviction, he killed himself. Stabbed himself in the neck. Mikheyev served his time, got out in 2017. Reports say he died in 2022, but the survivors, Tatyana Melnikova and Tatyana Koshikova, their story after rescue is heartbreaking. Society basically rejected them. They couldn't find steady work. People knew about the case, about the tattoos. They were marked, stigmatized. They even tried to raise money publicly to get the facial tattoos removed, to try and reclaim some normalcy. But nobody donated. Not a single contribution. They ended up living together, the two Tatyanas, with Koshikova's child. But the trauma, the hardship, it took its toll. Tatyana Melnikova died in 2004. Tatyana Koshikova followed in 2005, both from heart failure. And Irina Ganun, the woman whose bravery ended it all, she's still in Sergiev Posad, or was last reported there, still suffers from nightmares. The trauma led to a divorce. But she is remarried, found a new husband, and apparently moved away to an undisclosed location, trying to find some peace, finally.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it? The impact of these crimes just echoes on and on. It destroys lives long after the immediate danger is over. The struggle for acceptance, for dignity after something like this, it raises really big questions about what freedom truly means and how society supports or fails to support survivors of extreme trauma, especially the most vulnerable.
Yeah. This whole story, the slaveholder case, it really shows the absolute worst of human cruelty, but also that incredible, almost unbelievable strength people can find to survive. It makes you think about the circumstances that allow such darkness to fester, doesn't it? And how crucial it is to look out for those on the margins, the ones society might overlook. When you hear this, what really stands out to you? Is it the resilience of someone like Irina or Koshikova? Or is it the tragic lack of support they faced afterwards? Something to think about. If this deep dive into such a chilling case was compelling for you, and you appreciate exploring these kinds of true crime stories, please do consider supporting channels like Horror Docs. Give us a like, share this, subscribe if you haven't, it really helps. Thank you for joining us today on this journey into a very dark chapter. We'll be back soon with another story to unpack.